The night the twins were born, the plantation did not sleep. Wind dragged through the tall trees like a warning. The big house stood bright against the darkness, lamps glowing as servants rushed through hallways with lowered eyes. Inside the master bedroom, the air was thick with sweat, fear, and prayers whispered too late. Two cries pierced the silence. Not one. Two. Lady Esther screamed as the final pain tore through her, and then suddenly, quiet. The midwife lifted the first baby, pale and pink, his cry strong and demanding. "A boy," she announced. Esther's shoulders loosened. Her trembling hands reached forward, desperate for reassurance. When the child was placed on her chest, she let out a broken laugh. But then the midwife turned back. Another cry filled the room, deeper, rougher. The second child emerged, and as the lantern light touched his skin, the joy in the room vanished. Esther's smile collapsed. Her eyes widened in terror. The baby was darker. Not just a little, enough. Enough to awaken a past Esther had spent years burying beneath silk dresses and forced smiles. Her husband, Senor Joao, stepped closer, proud and unaware. "Twins," he said happily. "God has blessed us twice." But Esther didn't hear him. Her breathing turned shallow. Her fingers clawed the sheets. The midwife, Izara, noticed immediately. That look on Esther's face wasn't shock. It was recognition. With a trembling voice, Esther spoke words that would curse two lives forever. "Take that child away." The room froze. Juon laughed nervously. "Esther, you're tired. It's the pain talking." But Esther's eyes burned. "I said take him away." The fair-skinned baby remained pressed to her chest. The darker one was lifted without ceremony. That was the moment fate split in two. Before dawn, Daniel slept in a silver cradle beside his parents, wrapped in embroidered cloth. And Bento, the boy who shared his womb, slept in a straw basket in the slave quarters, pressed against Isara's chest for warmth. Two sons, one mother, two destinies decided before their first sunrise. Isara rocked Bento gently, whispering prayers meant for protection, not hope. She had lived long enough to know this world didn't forgive children born in the wrong skin. Above them, Esther stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The second cry still echoed in her head. The house that chose one child. 1,300 words. Morning light revealed the injustice clearly. Daniel was celebrated. Servants smiled at him. Joao announced his birth with pride. Visitors arrived with gifts before the blood on the sheets had even dried. "Just like his father," they said. Every word stabbed Esther, not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't fully true. Down below, Bento learned silence. He learned hunger without complaint. He learned that his name was spoken only when work needed to be done. Isara raised him with what little she had: warmth, stories, dignity. "You are not small," she whispered. "The world only wants you to believe you are." Esther avoided Bento entirely. Whenever she heard his name, her chest tightened. When she saw his face, memory attacked her. Toei. The name burned in her mind like a brand. Years ago, he had been a slave on the plantation. Strong, quiet, observant. He carried baskets through the orchard, eyes lowered, except when they met hers. Forbidden glances, stolen moments, a love that had no future. When her family suspected, Toei was sold overnight. No goodbye. Just absence. Esther believed time had erased him. Until Bento was born. That darker skin was not a curse. It was proof. Guilt hollowed Esther slowly. She favored Daniel not out of love, but fear. Fear that if she didn't, the truth would surface. But truth is patient. And it was watching. As the boys grew, so did the contrast. Daniel learned letters and music. Bento learned labor and restraint. Yet when they were near each other, something undeniable surfaced. Same eyes, same posture, same way of thinking before acting. One day, hidden behind the storage shed, fate brought them face to face. Daniel held a rope toy. Bento held a bucket. Daniel offered the rope. Bento hesitated, waiting for permission that never came. Their hands touched, and something ancient stirred. Isara saw it and felt terror and hope collide inside her. Blood does not ask permission. The slaves whispered more boldly now. Antonio, the old man who remembered everything, finally said it aloud. "That boy has Toei's face?" The secret was no longer asleep. The storm came violently. Rain swallowed the land. Daniel slipped. The river took him. And Bento, the forgotten son, ran without hesitation. He saved him. Mud, water, fear, truth, all tangled together. Esther watched it happen. The son she rejected saved the son she protected. In that moment, the lie cracked. Daniel asked the question. João couldn't answer. Isara spoke. Esther collapsed. Esther confessed everything. The love, the lie, the rejection. João recognized Bento publicly, not as heir, but as son. Daniel chose brotherhood. Bento chose forgiveness, not because the pain vanished, but because it would not own him. The plantation changed. Slowly. Painfully. But truth finally stood where lies once ruled. After Esther's confession, the plantation did not explode into chaos. It went quiet. Not the peaceful kinds of quiet, but the kind that presses against your ears and makes your chest feel heavy. The servants walked more slowly. Doors were closed more carefully. Conversations stopped when someone else entered the room. The truth had arrived, but no one knew what to do with it. Bento felt it before he understood it. People began looking at him differently. Not with cruelty, not even with kindness, but with curiosity. The kind that asks questions without words. The kind that weighs a person like an object whose value is being reconsidered. For years, Bento had learned how to be invisible. Now suddenly he was impossible to ignore. Daniel stayed close to him after the confession. Not out of guilt, but confusion. The world he had grown up in had rules, clear ones, masters and slaves, upstairs and downstairs, fair skin and dark. Now those rules were cracking. One afternoon, while Bento was repairing a broken fence near the animal pens, Daniel approached him quietly. He stood there for a long moment, unsure how to begin. "Do you hate me?" Daniel finally asked. Bento didn't answer immediately. He wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at his brother. Really looked at him. The boy who had everything. The boy who never asked for Bento's suffering, but benefited from it anyway. "No," Bento said slowly, "but I had to learn things you never did." Daniel swallowed. That sentence stayed with him longer than any lesson he had ever learned from a tutor. Esther's recovery was slow. Not because her body was weak, but because her mind had finally stopped running. She no longer had the energy to maintain lies. Every breath felt like it weighed more than the last. When she looked out the window, she saw Bento working in the yard. Every movement reminded her of Toei. The way he carried himself. The quiet focus. The refusal to beg for dignity. One evening, Esther asked Isara to sit with her. "You knew," Esther said weakly. Isara didn't deny it. "I knew enough." "Why didn't you speak sooner?" Isara met her eyes. "Because speaking earlier would have destroyed the boy." That truth landed hard. Esther nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now," Isara said, "silence would destroy him." For the first time in years, Esther understood that love when hidden becomes cruelty. Not everyone welcomed the change. Some overseers muttered. Some neighboring landowners whispered. Some servants feared retaliation. A mixed-blood son acknowledged in the big house was dangerous. It challenged the entire system. João felt it too. Business partners questioned him indirectly. Invitations stopped arriving. Respect turned into cautious distance. One night, João stood alone in his office, staring at the ledger books. He realized something painful. The plantation had survived on lies for years, and truth was expensive. Still, he did not reverse his decision. For the first time in his life, João chose consequence over comfort. Daniel began sneaking into the slave quarters. At first, just to watch. Then, to listen. He heard stories his tutors never told. Stories of families torn apart, names erased, people sold like tools. One night, an old woman asked him, "Why do you come here, white boy?" Daniel answered honestly, "Because my brother lives here." That word, brother, traveled faster than any rumor. For the first time, Daniel felt shame. Not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that demands change. He started sharing food, books, time. He learned that equality isn't declared. It's practiced. Antonio watched Bento closely as the boy grew into a young man. One evening, Antonio handed him an old carved pendant. "It belonged to Toei," he said quietly. Bento held it with shaking hands. He had never known his father. But now, suddenly, he carried a piece of him. That night, Bento cried. Not from pain, but from belonging. For the first time, his existence felt rooted. Years later, when João fell ill, the question of inheritance returned. Daniel stood before the family council. "I will inherit," he said, "but I will not rule alone." Gasps filled the room. "Bento will stand beside me." The decision shocked everyone. But no one could deny it. Because the plantation still stood because of the boy once rejected. Esther did not live long after. Before she passed, she asked Bento to sit beside her. "I stole your childhood," she whispered. "I can never return it." Bento held her hand. "I survived it," he said. "That matters too." When Esther died, she was buried without secrets. And when people spoke of Vale du Beau years later, they no longer spoke only of land or wealth. They spoke of the house that tried to hide truth. And failed. Because truth always returns. Sometimes wearing the face you were taught to reject.